Good evening, everyone. It is just a little bit after 7 p.m. We are going to get started in just a moment, but we do want to give folks an opportunity to get fully logged on before we get started. So bear with us and we'll be ready to go in just a minute. All right, once again, good evening, everyone, and welcome to the Frontier Drive Extension and Braided Ramps virtual location and design public hearing, hosted jointly this evening by the Virginia Department of Transportation, referred to as VDOT, and Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, referred to as WMATA or Metro. Tonight's public hearing represents VDOT's commitment to the major design features that are part of the project, along with the proposed changes to transit facilities at Metro's Franconia-Springfield station. My name is Andy Beecher, and I am one of VDOT's preliminary engineering managers here in the Northern Virginia District. We're glad that you could join us for this hearing tonight, and we look forward to receiving your input and feedback. I also want to mention that I'm joined by Metro Board Chair Paul Smedberg, who is serving as Metro's hearing officer for this joint hearing. Before we move on, I want to note that we'll be recording this location and design public hearing for future reference. And now I'd like to take a moment to recognize the elected officials joining us this evening. And I believe we do have Supervisor Rodney Lusk here with us this evening. Supervisor Lusk, would you like to make any opening remarks? We can unmute you, and then you'll also need to unmute yourself. All right, just want to try one more time. Supervisor Lusk, are you able to unmute yourself? All right, if not, we can always come back to you later. Just let us know and we'll go ahead and bring you back up. All right, I also do want to recognize Mr. Tom Bishadny, who is the Director of Fairfax County's Department of Transportation, who has also joined us this evening. Hi, Tom. If we could go to the next slide. Tonight, we are holding this location and design public hearing virtually as opposed to in person. Despite not meeting in person, it is our intent to convey, using this virtual platform, along with information from the project website, the same material that we would otherwise, including key project information, the process for submitting comments, and key points of contact. Next slide, please. Tonight is going to be broken into two parts. First, we'll have the presentation, and then we'll take questions and comments. We'll be taking both written and verbal questions, as well as comments. In your control panel, you should have a questions pane that will allow you to submit your written question or comment. And if you would like to ask a verbal question or make a verbal comment, you can select the raise your hand button. The moderator will call on you when it's your turn. If you're asking a verbal question or making a verbal comment, we will need to unmute you, and then we'll ask you to unmute yourself so that panelists and attendees will be able to hear you. And just one note on the verbal comments, they are limited to 3 minutes. Also, we wanted to note that if you're calling in via telephone, you will not be able to ask a verbal question or make a verbal comment. However, we will provide information on how you can submit your comments and/or questions following tonight's hearing. We'll also respond to questions that have been submitted to the project team prior to the public hearing tonight. Next slide, please. All right, next I'd like to introduce the project team from VDOT Fairfax County, and WMATA, who you'll be hearing from this evening. I've already introduced myself. I'm Andy Beecher, one of VDOT's preliminary engineering managers. We have Zamir Mirza, is VDOT's project manager with the Northern Virginia District's Location and Design section. Will Steinhilber is the FCDOT project coordinator. Stephen Segerlin is with the Washington Metropolitan Area Transit Authority, or Metro, and is managing this project for Metro. John Muse is the VDOT Nova District Environmental Manager, and Bob Kalbach is the VDOT Consultant Design Manager with WSP. Next slide, please. So here's our agenda for this evening. First, we'll provide information on the project background and design features. We'll review the Metro transit facilities. We'll step through the environmental assessment that was completed as part of the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. We'll review right-of-way information. We'll also review the estimated cost and funding, as well as the anticipated project schedule and next steps. And finally, we'll take questions or comments from the audience. Next slide, please. By way of background, what prompted the need for this project is the issue of high existing and future traffic demands in the Springfield area. In order to address these ongoing and anticipated concerns, this project looks to improve access and connectivity, as well as enhance capacity within the project area. One of the key elements of this project is the extension of Frontier Drive from its current terminus at the Franconia-Springfield Metro station to the north to Loisdale Road to the south. The extension is included in Fairfax County's comprehensive plan and is intended to support a mixed-use employment, residential, and retail transit-oriented development environment. Prior to our public hearing tonight, we had an initial public information meeting on December 17th, 2017, and a second public information meeting was held on May 17th, 2021. There were some changes to the design between those two meetings, and those were presented to the public in May of 2021. As part of the public hearing tonight, we will review the current design features associated with the project. Next slide, please. This next slide shows the project location area in its entirety. This includes the extension to the south to Loisdale Road, the introduction of braided ramps to the north at the interchange with the Franconia-Springfield Parkway, and the circulation area around the Metro station. The proposed improvements will enhance traffic operations and traffic safety by providing increased capacity and greater connectivity, provide improved accessibility to the Franconia-Springfield Metro station and businesses located along Springfield Center Drive, and improve pedestrian and bicycle facilities throughout the corridor, all while reducing congestion levels on regional roadways. Next, to talk about the specific details of the project, Bob Kalbach, our consultant design manager, will walk everyone through the design. Bob?
Thanks, Andy. Throughout this project, there's been a lot of coordination among VDOT, Fairfax County, WMATA, and adjacent property owners. And through that coordination, the proposed design for the project has evolved over recent years. Tonight, we'll get into the specifics of the proposed design. But first, let's briefly review the design features for this project. This project can be summarized by looking at three main areas of improvements. The first element is the extension of Frontier Drive from the Franconia-Springfield Parkway interchange and Metro station across Long Branch and down to Loisdale Road. Frontier Drive will replace Springfield Center Drive for the portion of the project that we call the South Project Area. Throughout the project, Frontier Drive will be a 4-lane divided roadway with shared use paths on both sides. The second element of the project is the modification of the Franconia-Springfield Parkway interchange into a braided ramp configuration to provide operational and safety improvements. Lastly, the project will include access improvements at and around the Franconia-Springfield Metro station site. This slide shows the current typical section. The overall width is 98 feet, and it contains 2 lanes in each direction, a raised median, and bicycle and pedestrian facilities on both sides. The on-road bike lanes shown in the initial public information meeting for this project in 2017 have been removed, and Frontier Drive will now include a 10-foot asphalt shared use path on the northbound side. That's the south or east side of the roadway, depending on where you are in the project, and a 10-foot concrete urban shared use path on the southbound side. The on-road bike lanes were removed in the north section due to the complex interaction of vehicles and numerous traffic movements near the interchange and metro station. For the purpose of consistency, the south section will not include on-road bike lanes either. Before we walk through more of the project details, on this slide, you'll see the legend for the upcoming maps. I won't run through every element, but just to highlight a few items. The proposed roadway is shown in black with the dashed line down the middle, which represents the pavement markings that you'll see on the plans. The proposed shared use path and sidewalk, or urban shared use path, are shown in the bright magenta color. The proposed grass median, grass buffers, and other green space are shown in a darker green. The existing right-of-way or property lines are shown using a light blue line. The proposed right-of-way is shown using a red line. The proposed temporary construction easements are shown in a dashed dotted orange line. And the drawings will also show proposed traffic signals, stormwater management basins, bridges, retaining walls, and other project elements, as you can see in the legend. Next, we'll focus on the improvements in the north project area. As a result of continued coordination with WMATA and the completion of a value engineering study on the project in 2018, revisions were made to the 2017 concept and are shown in this slide. But this is generally the same information that was shown at the public information meeting last spring. A main feature of the north project area is the braided ramp configuration of the interchange. This new configuration provides similar movements to the existing interchange, but separates them to avoid conflicts and weaving, to eliminate potential conflicts between vehicles and bikes or pedestrians, and to provide more efficient operations. Also included is a new connection from the existing trail along the north side of Franconia-Springfield Parkway to the new trails proposed on the outside of the braided ramps, which eliminates the current crossing of the loop ramp. As noted when we were viewing the typical section, the on-road bike lanes were removed due to the complex traffic movements in this area. The bus layover configuration that was shown in past meetings has been revised to improve bus operations entering and exiting the lot. However, this is just shown as a shaded area on the plans, as this lot has been designated to be part of a future project. The intersection at the entrance to the metro station was modified to a jug handle configuration, and we'll discuss that more on the next slide. In addition, the roundabout planned on the east end of the station site in 2017 has been eliminated in favor of a signalized intersection. This change was a result of coordination with WMATA, considering the planned circulation of the site and future plans for facilities around the area. This slide provides a zoomed-in view of the area around the metro station, which includes the jug handle intersection configuration, elimination of the roundabout, and changes in circulation around the station. As noted on the previous slide, the new entrance to the metro station site has been reconfigured with a jug handle. For those not familiar with the jug handle, this is a type of intersection configuration that changes the way traffic turns left at an at-grade intersection. Instead of a standard left turn being made from the left lane, left-turning traffic, which in this case is traffic on southbound Frontier Drive that wants to turn into the metro station, uses a ramp on the right side of the road. This configuration will also allow vehicles and buses coming from Franconia-Springfield Parkway that want to enter the metro station to stay to the right when they turn onto southbound Frontier Drive. This configuration improves operations along Frontier Drive and eliminates the majority of the weaving movements that were present in the previous design. Within the metro site, the drop-off area along the median of the station access road has also been removed, which both mitigates a current point of congestion and also allows the median to be reconfigured to allow for the addition of bus layover spaces along the station entrance side of the median. On the east end of the metro site, the intersection that was previously proposed as a roundabout has been replaced with a signalized intersection, which minimizes impacts to future expansion of WMATA facilities and simplifies pedestrian movements in and around the intersection. Other features within the Metro site include the addition of additional concrete space along the back of the existing bus bays to provide extra space for bikes and pedestrians outside of the queuing area for the buses. Having covered some of the specific changes in the interchange and the Metro site, we'll now walk through the project area from north to south and highlight a few more features of the project. First, we'll look at the braided ramps. These braided ramps will improve traffic operations and safety at the interchange by providing the same movements that exist today, but more efficiently and without the weaving that exists today at the ramps to and from the parkway. The new configuration also includes new and revised bicycle and pedestrian connections that both provide additional connectivity and avoid vehicular conflicts. I would also like to mention that as a result of the preliminary noise study that was performed, the area north of the braided ramps qualifies for a sound wall. These results are preliminary, and a final noise study will need to be performed as the project moves into final design. Along the north section of Frontier Drive, the proposed changes from the existing configuration are minor, but they do include widened pedestrian facilities on both sides of the roadway that coincide with the removal of the existing on-road bike lanes. At the interchange ramps north of the parkway, which provide movements to and from the westbound parkway, the changes are minor and are associated with the new braided ramp configuration. At the interchange ramps south of the parkway, the main change is the widening of the ramp from the eastbound parkway to Frontier Drive, which provides one additional lane approaching Frontier that not only helps provide additional space for vehicles to queue, but also allows for vehicles to choose from 3 right turn lanes based on their destination, with vehicles accessing the Metro station using the 2 right-hand right turn lanes, and vehicles continuing south on Frontier Drive using the innermost right turn lane. At the Metro station property, we already walked through most of the changes, and staff from WMATA will highlight a few other items when we get to the next slides. The south project area includes the portion of Frontier Drive or the Frontier Drive extension south of the Metro station entrance, which starts with a new bridge over Long Branch and continues south to connect to Loisdale Road along the general alignment of Springfield Center Drive. This section includes the smaller typical section discussed earlier and is shown in 2021 to reduce the footprint of Frontier Drive, in particular at the intersection with Loisdale Road. The reduced typical section made it possible to eliminate the impacts to the building on the corner of Frontier Drive and Loisdale Road. Through the reduction of the typical section and through a retrofit of the existing stormwater management pond, the project was able to reduce the impact on adjacent parcels along Frontier Drive. The access points along Frontier Drive provide access to the existing properties, as well as to adjust for future phases of the property. Adjust for future phases of the property adjacent to the new TSA headquarters, and crosswalks are provided at many of the crossings. Through coordination with staff from the Northern Virginia Community College, the access to the Nova Medical School was adjusted from what was shown previously to a configuration that provides movements closer to the current access configuration at the campus. In addition, the access to the GSA property was adjusted from the larger access point with 2 northbound left turn lanes shown previously to a configuration that more closely matches the current access. The expanded entrance that was shown previously was originally associated with the potential new FBI headquarters. That covers most of the general features of the project. So next I'll turn it over to Stephen with Metro to discuss the Metro facilities.
Thanks, Bob, and good evening, everyone. My name is Stephen Segerlin, and I am the Director of Real Estate and Manager of this project for Metro. First, I'll discuss changes to the station's access. The project would add a new signal to connect the Frontier Drive extension at the Jug Handle intersection on the left side of the graphic. Additionally, the intersection on the right side of the graphic will be reconfigured to include a new traffic signal that will further improve traffic flow and operations. On the next slide are the changes to the bus facilities. 3 new bus bays will be added to the existing bus bay area. The project also includes a new bus layover facility that may be built in the future as part of a separate project. The next slide shows changes to the kiss and ride facilities. These changes include the removal of the existing pickup and drop-off area shown in the red dashed outline zone on the map, which will help to further improve traffic flow and operations of the parking garages. There will also be modifications to the access points for the existing kiss and ride garage and the kiss and ride parking lot highlighted in the orange squares on the middle and right side of the graphic. On the next slide are the changes to the park and ride facilities. There is no change to the total number of parking spaces that will be available in the garage. However, there are minor configuration changes to 2 of the 5 entrances to the park and ride garage. On the graphic, you'll see the existing gate lanes shown in blue and the new gate lanes shown in orange that are needed to also accommodate traffic flow and operations. Those locations are additionally highlighted in the red dashed circles on the graphic. Now I will turn it over to John Muse with VDOT to discuss the environmental assessment.
Thanks, Stephen, and good evening, everyone. I'm John Muse, the VDOT Northern Virginia District Environmental Manager, and tonight I'm going to talk about the environmental assessment, also referred to as an EA, which was prepared for compliance with the National Environmental Policy Act, or NEPA. NEPA was signed into law in 1970 and is required for federally funded projects, which includes this project. As depicted on this slide, NEPA is referred to as an umbrella statute because other applicable environmental and historic preservation laws and regulations, including executive orders, may apply for inclusion into one environmental analysis for a streamlined decision-making process. The lead federal agency is the Federal Highway Administration, and the EA was prepared in accordance with their NEPA implementing regulations in the Code of Federal Regulations. The EA that was prepared details an analysis of the potential environmental effects associated with the proposed project improvements. Next slide, please. NEPA is a procedural law where it must be demonstrated that proper process was followed. One of the first steps is to determine the significance of the environmental impacts the proposed project is likely to have. The determination of significance requires consideration of both context and intensity, which are defined by NEPA in this slide. In addition to evaluating the potential environmental effects, the Federal Highway Administration must also take into account the transportation needs of the public in reaching a decision that is in the best interest of their overall public interest. The NEPA process is an approach that balances transportation decision-making that considers these potential impacts. On the next slide, you'll see the purpose and needs summary from the EA. Next slide, please. The purpose and need is the most important section of the EA as it establishes the reason why the project is being proposed. This project will address traffic congestion, improve accessibility to local business and facilities, improve traffic operations and safety, enhance the overall transportation network connectivity in the Springfield area, and also provide access control that allows for safe crossings of autos and pedestrians at signalized intersections. On the next slide is an image of the environmental study area, which was used for the environmental documentation. The environmental study area is somewhat larger than the project's design footprint and is centered on the Franconia-Springfield Parkway, bound by Beulah Street to the east, Loisdale Road and the I-95 Express Lane ramps to the west, Springfield Mall Road to the north, and the Franconia-Springfield Transit Center to the south. A range of alternative options, including no build, were evaluated in the EA to arrive at a preferred build alternative, which is described and presented here tonight. The preferred build alternative addresses the purpose and need for this project. The potential environmental impacts of the preferred alter were then assessed for significance. We'll look at a summary of the potential impacts that were evaluated in the EA in the next slide. This table summarizes the environmental resource evaluated in the left column and the potential impacts from the project in the right column. I would like now to briefly go over some of these environmental resources. Next slide. Environmental justice, or EJ, is rooted in Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. On February 11, 1994, Executive Order 12898 was signed requiring all federal actions to address environmental justice in minority populations and low-income populations. The United States Environmental Protection Agency defines environmental justice as the fair treatment and meaningful involvement of all people, regardless of race, color, national origin, or income, with respect to the development, implementation, and enforcement of environmental laws, regulations, and policies. These proposed project improvements will displace 5 businesses, including a school and a cell tower that may be minority-owned. However, these impacts do not represent an adverse effect to the minority low-income populations as long as these displacements are in accordance with the Federal Uniform Relocation Assistance and Real Property Acquisition Act. Next slide, please. The proposed improvements are anticipated to slightly impact approximately or slightly more than 1,600 linear feet of streams and approximately 0.17 acres of wetlands. These impacts will require permits from the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers as well as the Virginia Department of Environmental Quality. These impacts may be further reduced as the final design is developed. Permitting of these unavoidable impacts to water resources and any mitigation required by the regulatory agencies would be concurrent with the final design phase. All water quality permits will be obtained prior to advertisement of the project for construction. Next slide, please. Hazardous wastes are regulated by the United States Environmental Protection Agency and defined in the Code of Federal Regulations. Materials are considered hazardous if they are specifically listed by regulations, exhibit hazardous characteristics, or universal waste, batteries would be a good example, or mixed waste. The principal objective of performing environmental due diligence is to identify, recognize environmental conditions in the study area, and then conduct environmental site assessments, or ESAs. Information was obtained from regulatory databases, site reconnaissance, available published information, as well as local and state government officials. A Phase 1 ESA was performed in 2017, which recommended further investigation under a Phase 2 ESA of a former wastewater treatment plant and a vacant office building warehouse. The 2017 Phase 2 ESA determined that there was no evidence of any regulated contamination on either property. Following some changes to the anticipated right-of-way for the preferred build alternative, a Phase 1 ESA was completed to update what was performed in 2017. The conclusions were that the findings of the 27 Phase 1 ESA remain unchanged. However, a limited subsurface investigation was recommended to assess any petroleum releases related to underground storage tank on the Franconia-Springfield Metro station property. The subsurface investigation performed under the 2021 Phase 2 ESA found no evidence of petroleum contamination on the property. Next slide, please. This project is defined as a federally funded Type 1 transportation improvement project. Consideration of potential noise impacts and abatement of those impacts is required by federal highways procedures for abatement of highway and construction noise. The state noise abatement policy follows FHW regulations and associated traffic noise guidance. Highway traffic noise impact assessment and analysis is performed in 2 phases, initially during the NEPA phase, which this project is presently in, and then again during the final design phase to verify the findings of the initial noise study. Where project noise levels exceed threshold criteria established by the Federal Highway Administration, An evaluation of reasonable and feasible noise abatement measures is required. On the next slide, we'll see the findings of the preliminary noise study prepared for this EA. Predicted noise levels in the design year 2043 were evaluated for 5 common noise environments or communities using the Federal Highway Administration's traffic noise model. Noise impacts were determined to occur within 2 of these 5 communities. Noise barriers were then evaluated for these 2 communities and found to be feasible and reasonable. Barrier 1 is a potential 2-barrier system benefiting 208 receptor properties. The first barrier section begins along the south side of Spring Mall Drive, extending south along the west side of Frontier Drive, and ending to allow at least a 90-foot pedestrian access to the Springfield Station apartment complex. The second barrier section would then continue south to the Franconia-Springfield Parkway westbound on-ramp, and then along the 495 northbound lanes along the shoulder. At a height averaging 30 feet and about 2,383 feet in length, the barrier system would satisfy VDOT's design goal of 7 decibels of noise reduction for 96 of these receptor properties. The proposed project will also need to remove a section of an existing noise barrier along the Franconia-Springfield Parkway westbound lanes between the Frontier Drive interchange and the on and off bus ramps to the Franconia-Springfield Metro station. Barrier 2 is an in-kind replacement barrier which is relocated north of the existing barrier. At a height averaging 16 feet and 1,125 feet in length, Barrier 2 would benefit 12 receptor properties and provide traffic noise reduction that meets and exceeds the performance of existing noise barrier. As noted earlier, a final noise analysis will be completed during the final design phase to verify these findings before any decisions on noise barriers are made. Next slide, please. An environmental analysis must be considered for all indirect effects and cumulative impacts for a proposed project. Indirect effects include both known and unknown. Unknown effects are reasonably foreseeable or sufficient likely to occur. Indirect effects for this proposed project are expected to improve overall mobility and connectivity among surrounding land uses and transportation facilities. The cumulative impacts include the total of all impacts, direct and indirect, experienced by a particular resource. The proposed improvements would contribute minimal incremental impacts to socioeconomic and natural resources, which are not significant under NEPA. These impacts may be further reduced through implementing best management practices during the final design phase of the project. Next, we'll talk about the public availability of the EA. Next slide. Right. The NEPA process allows transportation officials to make project decisions that balance engineering and transportation needs with social, economic, and natural environmental factors. During this part of the process, a wide range of partners include the public, businesses, interest groups, and agencies at all levels of government to provide input on the project and environmental decisions. Engaging public involvement is an essential step for making a final decision, and the EAs are now available for your review on the project website. In addition, the preliminary noise technical report and other appendices are also available for your review. The EA and the appendices are also available for review in person at VDOT's Northern Virginia District Office, which is located at 4975 Alliance Drive in Fairfax, Virginia. Please call ahead at 703-259-1794 to make an appointment with appropriate VDOT staff. The EA and appendices are also available at the WMATA headquarters at 307th Street Southwest in Washington, D.C., the Richard Byrd Library at 7250 Commerce Street in Springfield, and at Fairfax County Supervisor Luss Lee District Office at the Franconia Government Center located at 6121 Franconia Road in Alexandria. Please call ahead at these locations to make an appointment to review these environmental documents. Public comments on the EA will be accepted through July 29th, 2022. We look forward to receiving your comments. Now, I will turn over the presentation to VDOT Project Manager Zamir Mirza, who will discuss right-of-way acquisition as well as project budget and schedule. Zamir?
Thanks, John, and good evening, everyone. My name is Zamir Mirza, and I'm the project manager for VDOT on this project. So from this slide, I wanted to summarize the right-of-way process. There are 22 properties that will either partially be or temporarily be acquired, as shown on the screen. Note these are subject to change as final design is developed. Each property acquisition will be discussed on a case-by-case basis after the right-of-way notice to proceed, as each acquisition is unique in nature. Additional information about the right-of-way process can be located at www.virginiadot.org Business Resource Right-of-way, a guide for property of tenants, as shown on the bottom of the screen here. Next, we move on to the estimate of the design build project and cost and funding. Before I go over these costs, I should explain that these are the projected estimated costs for the project if the project is fully funded for the right-of-way and construction phases. Previously, we have shared the current cost of the project without inflation factors and without knowing if and when the project would be funded. From this slide, you'll see that the projected preliminary engineering cost is $12.6 million. This is essentially the cost of engineering services needed to develop the design plans. The right-of-way and utility cost estimate is projected to be $42.1 million. This is the cost associated with acquiring the necessary rights-of-way needed for the project, as well as the projected cost of protecting or relocating above or below ground the areas that are impacted by the project. The project construction cost is approximately $167 million for a total cost of $221.7 million. All of these numbers are subject to change as the design is developed in further detail and when the funding is in place. Also shown on this slide is the current sources and allocation of funding, made up of local and Northern Virginia Transportation Authority and VTA regional funds, and Fairfax County will be seeking additional funds from various sources for the remaining phases of the project. As you can see from the slide, there is a funding shortfall of approximately $191.7 million. Next slide, please. So this is the current project schedule. We are now at the virtual public hearing, design public hearing, location design public hearing, and the comment period will close on July the 29th. Following that, we will seek endorsement from the county, as well as design approval from the VDOT chief engineer, and expect to have that by next winter. After that, we will begin work on the detailed design plans. And then the next phase of the project will be the right-of-way and the utility relocation stage. This is when we acquire the necessary rights-of-way from the affected property owners along the corridor. This is also when we will protect and, if necessary, relocate the utilities that are affected by the design. This is usually quite a lengthy process and is expected to take several years. The start of right-of-way acquisition, utility relocation, and construction is all dependent upon funding. So here is the next steps. We will continue our coordination efforts with WMATA, Fairfax County, and the project stakeholders. We will seek design approval and issue a public hearing staff report once the comment period is closed. And from there, we will work on the final design, depending upon the funding. So at this point, I'd like to turn it over to Carol to talk about the comment submissions and the process for the comment submissions before we start the question and answer session.
Thank you, Zamir. If we could move, thank you. We have several ways for you to send us your comments in addition to providing them this evening. You can send your comments either to VDOT or Metro, and we will make sure to share any comments either agency receives with each other. The methods include emailing at meetingcomments@vdot.virginia.gov or to Franconia@wamada.com. You can also mail us your comments at VDOT's Northern Virginia District Office, 4975 Alliance Drive, Fairfax, Virginia, 22030. And the WMATA Office of the Secretary at 300 7th Street Southwest, Washington, D.C., 20024. You can use the comment form on the study website at virginiadot.org/Frontier Drive Extension. And if you're on the website, click on the public hearing link, and on the meeting page, clicking on the orange box that says comments will take you down to the online comment form. If you scroll even further down, there are some optional demographic information that helps us to understand how our outreach efforts are working. You can also visit one of our offices during business hours. Please call ahead at 703-259-1794 to make an appointment at VDOT's Northern Virginia District Office, or 202-962-2511 to make an appointment at Metro's office. Comments need to be submitted by July 29th, 2022, and public input helps make our efforts better. So please get involved and provide your feedback. Next slide, please. So as we mentioned at the outset, we will be taking comments along with both written and verbal questions. In your control panel, you should have a questions pane that will allow you to submit your written questions and comments. If you would like to ask a verbal question or make a verbal comment, you can select the raise your hand button. I'll call on you when it's your turn to speak. We will unmute you and then we will ask you to unmute yourself so panelists and attendees will be able to hear you. Please remember to lower your hand following your question or comment. Now, before we start with our Q&A session, I would like to recognize the elected officials who have joined us tonight. I know we introduced Supervisor Lusk earlier, and we'd like to give him the opportunity to say a few words. So Supervisor Lusk, we will go ahead and unmute you now. And if you can unmute yourself in order to speak.
Okay, can you hear me okay?
Yes, we can.
Perfect. I just want to thank VDOT and the folks from the Department of Transportation for this presentation here this evening, and look forward to hearing the comments that are specific to this proposal on Frontier Drive. And also want to acknowledge, I see with the funding that we do have a ways to go, but we'll articulate that this is a project that I know the folks at Northern Virginia Community College have worked very closely with VDOT on. I just want to say, in addition, that I appreciate the work that they've done to resolve a number of issues with their entrance, and then also the issue with the sound walls as well. So just want to say again, looking forward to the next steps and hearing what questions and comments the community has with regard to this project. So thank you.
Thank you, Supervisor Lusk. I believe we also have on the line Delegate Vivian Watts. Delegate Watts, would you like to say anything before we start our Q&A session?
No, just ever so briefly, I really appreciate the overview of this very significant project. Thank you so much, Supervisor Lusk, for all of your good work on the ground, and I look forward to questions.
Thank you, Delegate Watts. Okay, so we're going to start off with some of the written questions and comments we've received in the written question box in the order they were received. And we will also provide an opportunity for attendees to ask verbal questions or provide verbal comments. For those who ask verbal comments or questions, please keep your questions succinct to allow for more questions to be asked. For those providing verbal comments, we ask that you limit your comments to 3 minutes. If attendees call in using a phone, you are in listen-only mode and are not able to ask a verbal question. However, you can submit questions or comments via email, regular mail, or by calling the project manager as described earlier in the presentation. Okay, Zamir, our first question for tonight comes from Thomas, who asks, specifically, the proposal to remove the pickup drop-off area is completely unacceptable. We do not need more bus bays or an additional entrance. This is a waste of taxpayer dollars. Zamir? Okay, we might have lost Zamir. Let me turn this one over to Stephen.
Sorry, Carol.
Okay.
Carol, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you, Zamir.
Sorry. Yes, thank you for that comment. And we do acknowledge that we're not going to satisfy everybody's desires, but your comment has been received and accepted. Thank you.
Zamir, our next question comes from Larry. He wants to know, what is the current volume of traffic on Loisdale Road at the intersection with the proposed extension of Frontier Drive? And what is the projected traffic volume once the project is complete?
So I'm hoping I can ask our consultants if they have that information. It's not the information that I have at hand.
Hey, Zamir, this is Hari Thacker.
Go ahead, Ari. Thank you.
To answer the question, the existing volumes on Loisdale Road is 12,000 ADT, which is daily trips. The total traffic volumes in a day is 12,000 currently, and trips will increase to 16,000 in year 2024 when project is expected to be built.
Thanks, Ari.
Thank you all. Zamir, our next question comes from Larry, who wants to know, will Loisdale Road be widened to accommodate higher traffic volume using the intersection with Frontier Drive? Will Loisdale Estates homes that face Loisdale Road face acquisition and demolition to accommodate a widening of Loisdale Road?
Yes, to my knowledge, this project is not widening anything on Loisdale Road. The volumes do not suggest a widening is necessary. However, the county may have some proposed improvements on Loisdale. They can chime in if they do have any knowledge of that, but I'm not aware of any improvements on Loisdale Road.
Thank you, Zamir. So our next comment comes from Alexis. She says, there are slip lanes in several places in the design. Slip lanes are exceedingly dangerous for people walking and biking, and they encourage drivers to move fast and not yield with minimal gain in their drive time. Slip lanes should not be used in a dense transportation area where people will be walking and biking to and from the station. Most of the curb radii are large and encourage high car speeds, and they also expand the road space people must cross, increasing conflicts between people and cars. The curb radii should be significantly reduced.
So the speed limit throughout the corridor of Frontier Drive is 25 miles an hour. Correct me if I'm wrong, consultants, which is very low speed. Obviously, you know, it's a fairly it's a road which is abutted by several businesses and the community college and the WMATA as well. Yeah, we have designed all of the geometry based on a design speed that we expect to have on that road. And I'm not sure exactly what you mean by slip ramps. We have ramps that come off of on and off of Franconia-Springfield Parkway. And I'm not sure you're referring to those. Those are not something that we're altering. If we're talking about the ramps that are on the braided ramps, those are designed again to an expected design speed, and you know, they are geometrically designed so that they are safe for the design speed of traffic. Now, obviously, not everybody's going to follow the law, and that's going to be an enforcement issue that's going to need to be addressed.
Thank you, Zamir. Our next question comes from Alexis. Which agency, VDOT, WMATA, or Fairfax County DOT, is responsible for the path adjacent to Franconia-Springfield Parkway and the Metro Police Facility that connects Frontier Drive and Metropolitan Center Drive? This is a crucial connection to the Metro, and the path is in such poor condition. It is literally sliding off the roadway embankment. West of the Metro Police Facility toward Metropolitan Center Drive, sinkholes, massive tree roots, and unmaintained, overgrown vegetation has destroyed the path. The remnants of a fractured, jagged metal bollard stick out about 5 inches in the middle of the path around a blind turn with overgrown vegetation.
Thank you for that comment. I think we've had that comment before, and I think the previous response that we provided is that we, between VDOT and the Fairfax County, will determine, how that path or trail needs to be up, at least made safe. I believe it is in poor condition. We have not established who maintains that, if it's VDOT or Fairfax County, but we will get into the bottom of this, and we will get that repaired and to a safe and usable facility as necessary whenever we can establish the responsible party. But thank you for bringing that up again.
Thanks, Amir. The next question we have tonight comes from Ruben. He says, will any of the homes on Melia Street lose any property footage? If not, how close will these roads come to the property line of these homes on Melia Street?
So Melia Street, I just need to understand exactly where Melia Street is in relation to the project. Okay, so we are not acquiring any property in that community at all. The proposed ramps, as you can see from this slide, do get closer to the community. However, there will be the preliminary noise analysis established that it does qualify for a sound wall at that location. So just to emphasize again, we are not acquiring any right away from that community.
Thank you, Zamir. The next question comes from Odette. She would like to know if the drop-off and pickup area is removed from the outside lanes of the metro station, where will it be relocated? I anticipate more congestion moving through the first floor of the additional parking lot during peak hours.
So this is a two-part question. The first part, Stephen, do you want to say a few words about the philosophy of the park and ride or the drop-off area?
Can you ask that question one more time to make sure I heard it correctly?
Yep, sure. So she asks if the drop-off pickup area is removed from the outside lanes of the metro station, where will it be relocated? She anticipates more congestion moving through the first floor of the additional parking lot during the peak hours.
So there are a few areas for pickup drop-off activity, or what we call kiss and ride at this station. The primary point is in the ground floor of the east garage, which is just to the right of the pedestrian bridge in this image. So that is the location that we are trying to direct kiss and ride or pickup drop-off customers to use primarily. And then additionally, there is a second kiss and ride lot, a surface lot that you see further to the right. So that is where we're directing customers who are either coming from the east or the west sides of the site are to use those locations. The pickup drop-off area that we have removed is proposed as part of this project will help improve traffic flow into the garage for the park and ride and to that kiss and ride facilities that are in the east garage ground floor. We had observed that there have been congestion that has been blocking traffic to get to these facilities. And with the changes to operations with the traffic signal, we needed to focus on that access into these garages to maintain the level of service.
Thank you, Stephen. Samir, our next question comes from Frank. He asks, what is the current anticipated schedule for the completion of the Frontier Drive extension?
So if I can refer you back to my explanation on the slides that we spoke of regarding the cost and the schedule. The schedule is a little bit indeterminate at the moment because we have no visibility on the status of the funding for the right-of-way acquisition, utility relocation, and the construction phases. At the moment, we are only working with the design as we see it, which is the preliminary design. And once the project is funded, we will start designing the detailed design after we get the design approval. So the next stage would be, after the detailed design stage is started, would be the right-of-way and utility relocation phase. So again, it all depends upon when funding comes in place for the project. And then consequently, once the right-of-way phase is completed, which is likely to take, as I mentioned, quite a long time, because we have to acquire the right-of-way, then we have to relocate the utilities, which are a significantly long period is required, up to about 2 or 3 years. And then once the right-of-way phase is over, then we will develop the design for the construction plans. Again, so the construction phase is likely to take quite a long time as well, probably 2 to 3 years for that phase. So it's again, as I mentioned, it's all depending upon when the funding comes in place, and the county is going to be hoping to apply for the various funding sources that I mentioned in the funding slide. I don't know if Tom Bouchardny wants to say anything here.
So just to follow up on that, Zamir, the county will be submitting to the Virginia Department of Transportation Smart Scale competition for funding. The applications are due on August 1st, and so this will be one of the ones that the county will be submitting. But there will be other opportunities for funding from various regional, state, and federal sources. So we'll continue to look for funding in all of those levels until we're able to secure the funding for the project.
Thanks, Tom and Zamir. The next question comes from Matthew. He asks, regarding the sound barrier on the Springfield Forest portion of the project, this appeared to be a future decision. Is the decision only regarding the size of the barrier to replace the existing barrier or some other consideration?
So at this point, I'll introduce our sound engineer, environmental sound engineer. His name is LJ. LJ, do you want to speak to that? I think you have a little more, or even John. Go ahead, one of you.
Yeah, sure. Thanks, Zamir. So the like what was indicated in the presentation earlier, the preliminary noise study was completed as part of this project, and based on the study, the wall in question will be replaced in kind. There is an existing noise barrier there, so it will be replaced in kind, meaning that at minimum the barrier height would be the same as the height that's there, but that's the minimum requirement, meaning that it might be higher. So as we progress to the final design phase, a detailed noise study will be done, and the results that you see here, they may actually change.
Thank you, LJ. Zamir, our next question is from Henry. He says, please explain how passengers from train will access the new kiss and ride across the road.
I'm hoping Steve can help us with this one.
Hey there. There is a pedestrian crossing that is at grade from the kiss and ride, whereby pedestrians would be able to cross to the metro station.
Okay, thank you all. Our next question comes from Philip, who asks, what is the estimated loss of acres of tree canopy? What mitigation is planned for the loss of canopy and carbon capture services?
I'm hoping either John can.
Well, we don't have the NEPA document didn't evaluate an exact count of like the tree canopy, but it did indicate that there could be up to 22 acres of forest land impact. And again, this is based on the current preliminary design, but those figures could be further reduced as we go into the more detailed design phase. That's really the information I can bring up for now, but we don't do like a tree canopy count as part of the NEPA process. But anyway, the EA, if you go to the website, the EA, it has an impacts table, and it talks about forest land about 22 acres. The total project area, just as a general statement, is about 190 acres. And of that, 22 acres of forest land under the current concept design is anticipated for impacts. As far as mitigation, there's no plans for mitigation, but I don't know, Zamir, are there any plans for landscape design with this project?
Yes, I believe there is going to be landscape included, also lighting. So, but again, that will all come to light in the detailed design stage.
Okay.
Thank you, John and Zamir. Zamir, the next question comes from Henry. He asks, how high will the new sound walls be? What are the walls materials? And is there a slide that shows the sound wall locations?
So I
Yes,
think I answered some of that already, but I think you had the previous slide did mention some dimensions and length information, right? So we just go
yes.
back to that slide again.
Yeah. So based on the preliminary noise study that was done, there are two noise barriers that were shown to be feasible and reasonable. I think that the first barrier right there, barrier 1, it has that length of 2,383 feet, and then the other one is 1,125 feet. I think the heights, they're not shown here, but the height for barrier 2, I believe it's an average height of 16 feet. And then the height for barrier 1 is an average height of 30 feet. However, this information is based on a preliminary noise study. And again, as we advance to the detailed design, a final noise study would be done. It is only the completion of the noise study that we would know the final parameters of the noise barriers. I believe the other question was about the material. So the aesthetic for the noise barriers is something that is determined during the final design phase. However, I would say that the barrier would likely be typical concrete noise walls, and especially if we're talking about a replacement wall, we typically try to match what's there already. So I don't know if that answers all the questions that were asked.
Yes. Did anybody have anything else to add?
No, LJ captured everything I was going to say.
Thank you all.
Thank you.
Okay. Zamir, the next question comes from Willie. He says, with the Franconia extension, you are proposing losing a building with business and leaving 2 abandoned buildings. I believe that's a comment. Can you confirm that, Zamir?
So as you can see from this slide, there we are acquiring that building. If we can focus in on that building, and it does have several businesses inside it, and this was unavoidable in the appreciation of the geometry of the road and the proximity of the metro and CSA track that is there. We just could not avoid impacting that building. As we've been in touch with the owners of that building, and they are aware that all the businesses in there are aware that it will be, they will need to be vacated when the project funding is made available for the right-of-way phase. And that is one of that is one total take that we have on this project. We did have another building at the beginning of Loisdale, at the Frontier Drive at Loisdale Road end, where we were able to save this building that's just north of the intersection here. That also had several businesses in it, and we were able to modify the design to avoid impacting that business, that building. So that was something that we could accommodate, but the one that I spoke of earlier was just completely unavoidable, and we were not able to save that building. However, there will be some significant land that was vacated that can still be maintained by the owner of that building.
And Zamir, just to clarify, I think the 2 abandoned buildings that were raised in the question are probably
those 2, yeah,
part of the TSA headquarters, and that's actually part of the same. It's owned by the same property owner that developed the TSA headquarters, and it's part of a future phase of that development. So those buildings have already been acquired by Boston Properties.
Sorry, thanks, Bob. That is, again, that's clarification that we are not impacting those two properties as well. They are owned by the same owners as the TSA headquarters, and they do have plans to develop those parcels.
Thank you all. Okay, Zamir, our next question comes from Jim, who wants to know, can VDOT please fix the signal at the intersection of Springfield, Center Drive, and Loisdale before unleashing the additional traffic from the extension of Frontier Drive? Currently, people turning right from Springfield Center onto Loisdale trigger unnecessary red lights in both directions on Loisdale.
Yes, we're familiar with the traffic problems on Loisdale Drive. We are, as might have been mentioned, we are upgrading the signals at this location. I believe they were recently upgraded as well. Bob, if you are familiar with that. But we are modifying the signals for the project when the construction phase as part of our project.
Okay, thank you, Zamir. The next question comes from Philip, who asks, improved bicycle access is appreciated. The project should include repair and maintenance of the existing bike path running west from Metro to Loisdale, just south of the Parkway.
Yeah, I think that's been brought up earlier in this session, and we will be coordinating with the county bike and ped group to look at that facility and to get it in a usable and safe state. So that's something that we're going to coordinate with the county on because we still haven't established who maintains that current path facility.
Thank you. Okay, we have a verbal question now, and it's from Dana Kaufman. Dana, we're going to unmute you now, and you will also need to unmute yourself to ask your question. Dana, go ahead.
I think there's a little delay with unmuting on the platform. I'm sure he'll be on soon.
Yep, we'll give him a couple seconds here. While Dana is trying to unmute, we can come back to Dana. We will go to another verbal question we have from Bill Shuttleworth. Bill, we're going to unmute you now, and you will also need to unmute yourself to ask your question. Go ahead, Bill.
Thank you, Carol. I'm interested in the changes along Amelia Street. You stated that you're moving the road will be moving closer. Thanks for putting that graphic up to the property lines. None of the properties will be acquired there. And is there any determination as yet as to when in the construction phase the sound wall would actually proceed? I believe you did confirm pretty certainly that a sound wall, at least the size, if not larger than what is currently there, would be replaced. Has the timing been determined for that?
No, is the simple answer to that. But we, in previous public information meetings, we've had the same concerns voiced to us, and it's a valid concern, and we're very sensitive to those concerns. But I want to convey the same answer that I did before, is that VDOT does not control the contractor's work program in terms of where and when he wants to start his work, but we do encourage them, to be appreciative of the community's concerns, and we usually hold what we call a pardon our dust meeting prior to construction, and where everybody in the community is invited to voice their concerns. And while the contractor has probably already figured out how he's going to build this after he wins the award of the contract, we will interact with the contractor to encourage them to if they can, accelerate this area of the work that concerns your community.
So what you're telling me is to wait until the pardon our dust round of meetings to address this issue more substantially at that point.
Yes.
Correct. Okay. If I may, I'd like to follow up with one additional question, and it may fall in the line of what we just spoke about. I know our community has been very concerned about a utility issue that has a high pressure natural gas line that comes right at the south wall at the westernmost part of the graphic that you're showing there, the little sliver line. Have VDOT given any viewing to an assessment of that pipeline? Believe it's the Colonial Pipeline that travels there. And if not, when would be the appropriate time to address questions about that issue?
So what typically happens is, when we survey this whole area, we do what's called a utility designation survey, which is everything that's above and below ground with regards to utilities like water, gas, electric, power lines. All these things are picked up within the corridor limits, and I am not aware of any Colonial Pipeline existing there, but I will check in with my utility folks and to find out where exactly that is. If you're familiar with it, please share any information that you have, but I am not aware of any Colonial or petroleum line that exists out here. But again, we will, prior to the right-of-way phase of the project, we will need to coordinate all of these utilities that are affected by this project in order to determine what sort of impacts the project has on them.
Thank you, Zamir. So we're going to go back to Dana Kaufman. Dana, we're going to unmute you now, and if you can unmute yourself, you can ask your question. Again, we're looking for a verbal question or comment from Dana Kaufman.
I think since he's having maybe audio connection, Dana, you might want to write your comment down in the comment form.
Yep, or we can come back to him later. Okay. Zamir, the next question is from Pam. She asks, which school is going to be affected?
So I think we're talking about a private facility in the building that we are demolishing. I'm not sure exactly what the name of that school is, but I think that there is a school contained within that building that we are demolishing. I don't know the name of it.
Is that the
Sorry.
Rivermont School?
I'm not familiar with the name of that school. I think we do have it somewhere. I think, John, in the EA, we did mention the businesses that are in that building. I don't know if Steve is there.
Zamir, that is the Rivermont School, and they actually moved from their current location in September because they knew the project was coming, is our understanding.
That's correct.
Thank you all. Zamir, the next question comes from Pam. How much of the private property on Lois Drive is going to be acquired?
So currently, sorry, Loisdale Drive, is that, can we go to that area, Bob? I think if she's talking about Loisdale Drive, not familiar where that is. So what was the question again?
Yep. She asks, how much of the private property on Lois Drive is going to be acquired? She's typed it out, L-O-I-S Drive.
Okay, I don't know where Lois Drive is. Do you know where that is, Bob? So to be... Go on.
Sorry, Lois Drive is beyond the limits of the project.
Okay, we're not impacted.
On this exhibit,
Yeah.
so there's
The
no.
only community that we're impacting very slightly, actually, and probably not even any, is the few houses that abut Springfield Center Drive off of Leighton Drive. And I believe a significant portion of that is privately owned, as is the current Springfield Center Drive. Springfield Center Drive Road is a private road, it's not a VDOT road. So we'll be acquiring all the necessary right-of-way for this project.
Thanks, Zamir. Our next question comes from Philip, who asks, it appears the stormwater control ponds will come at the expense of tree canopy. Can't we preserve trees by putting stormwater control chambers beneath pavement?
So let's just zoom into that area, Bob, because I want to explain that. Or Bob, maybe you want to just, which ones are we talking about? Are we talking about the ones that are here showing on this slide, or these do look like they will be affecting quite a significant area of trees.
Yeah, and that what we're showing now, or as the commenter noted, are at-grade ponds, which would be cleared, sort of your standard VDOT stormwater management approach, and much easier to maintain. As the design progresses, we can look into other options, such as underground storage, but that'll be investigated as the design advances. So these are sort of the three new ponds. The other one that's down along existing Springfield Center Drive is really just a retrofit of the existing pond. So it's being slightly expanded to accommodate some of the additional pavement that's being put out there. But in general, it's just a small expansion of the pond that's there now.
Thank you, Bob. Our next question comes from Rosemary. She wants to know, has there been any discussion about establishing a special tax district to tax people that nearby to help pay for the project?
Yeah, I'm not aware of it. That would be a county decision.
Yeah, Zamir, this is Tom. There's been no discussion of establishing any kind of special tax district to pay for the project.
Thank you all. Our next question comes from Philip. He says, environmental impacts are cumulative for all projects in the area. Are impacts of other projects considered, especially the Atlantic Gateway Railroad expansion?
John, are you familiar with that?
I'll just do the first part of the question. Are other projects considered? And yeah, those are reasonably foreseeable, both ones that in the near future or completed. Some Atlantic Gateway projects did include improvements to 95 corridor, some express lanes. Those are mentioned in the EA. I'm not sure about the comment about the railroad, but from what I understand about the additional third lane of the railroad from Franconia to Occoquan, I believe it is, that was not included as part of this project evaluation for cumulative impacts. But there are other projects listed in the EA that identify the cumulative effects to individual resources.
Okay, thank you all. Our next question is from Henry. He says, how is the pedestrian crossing controlled to access the kiss and ride? Is there an electronic stop sign or do you dodge the cars?
I think Bob or Stephen, I think we have at-grade crossing points. If we can just highlight those on this exhibit.
Yeah, just to clarify, there's really no change to the access that's out there today. The kiss and ride currently in the ground floor of the east garage, and there's currently at-grade crossings there. So someone accessing the kiss and ride or accessing the metro station from the kiss and ride would be on the same at-grade crosswalks as are there today, or the other option is they can take the elevator and cross the bridge into the metro station itself. So it's really the same two options there that are there today.
And let's, while we're on this slide, mention to everybody that we are with the discussion cooperation with WMATA, we are trying to prevent people from crossing, that area west of that bridge, without regard to safety and stuff, because that is a hazard. So we probably will be putting a fence up on that median through there to prevent people from crossing mid-block. That's purely a safety aspect.
Okay, thank you, Zamir. Our next question comes from Rosemary, who asks, what does the 1,610 feet of linear feet of stream impacts encompass? Is the stream being moved or redirected?
We're accounting for the impacts based on the conceptual design. I would defer to the consultant to kind of address whether or not we're looking at piping or other opportunities for like a stream relocation. A lot of that does happen during the detailed design, but for depot, we're looking at based on the current impacts for permitting. But maybe someone from the design group can address how these impacts will be, piped in or.
Yeah, really, the main stream running through the area is Long Branch itself.
Correct. There's two streams.
It's a fairly small stream. It's generally fairly easy to avoid. So the 1,600 feet, I think, is kind of the worst case. But right now, the design of the bridge is missing the channel itself, and that will certainly continue to be considered as the project progresses. So there is no plan to relocate the stream or to have to pipe anything, with Long Branch. The bridge will just be spanning it.
And I'll just add that, during the permitting process for the regulatory agencies requiring mitigation, then what they request permit applicants is to obtain what are referred to as stream credits from an approved stream and wetland mitigation bank. And that would happen during the final design process and be a requirement for the agencies before the permits can be authorized to VDOT.
Okay, thank you all. The next comment comes from Henry. He says, this is not a question, but a comment. These consultants should have more information at this time. Their excuse that things will be worked out later is unacceptable. Very disappointed in this presentation. Do you have any follow-up, Samir?
I accept the comment.
Okay, our next is a follow-up question from Jim when he was talking about the traffic signal. He says, any upgrade hasn't fixed that problem. It was still happening yesterday.
Sorry, could you repeat that question?
Yeah, this is from Jim, who had talked about the traffic signal earlier. He says, any upgrade hasn't fixed that problem. It was still happening yesterday.
Oh, so you're talking about the signal on Loisdale?
That's correct.
I think he's referring to the signal at Loisdale. Yeah. So again, we are upgrading that signal as part of this project, and I'm not aware of any issues related to the recent upgrade of that signal. I could certainly touch base with our traffic section to figure out, what kind of issues that's current signal configuration is experiencing. But that's as much as I know about the issues with that signal.
Okay, thank you. We have a couple more questions to get to before we wrap it up tonight. Our next question comes from Yogishi. Will the Layton Drive homes be affected?
Yeah, I think I mentioned that earlier, that the road may appear to get closer to them, but if you look closer at the right-of-way property line, the strip of the area of land is not on their right-of-way. It's on that private property. The road is owned by a private person, and we're acquiring the necessary right-of-way from that owner and not the Layton Drive community.
Thank you, Zamir. Our next comment is from Dana Kaufman, who had tried to speak earlier. Dana is with the Northern Virginia Community College. He says he wishes to thank Delegate Watts, Fairfax County Board Chair Jeff McKay, and Supervisor Rodney Lusk for their early support to have NOVA's concerns addressed. The changes to access to our medical education campus, as proposed by VDOT and county staff, meet our needs. Thank you for listening and taking action. We have two more questions and then we're going to wrap it up for tonight. Next one comes from Natalie. She says, does VDOT stormwater pond design take into account increased precipitation expected as a result of climate change?
Do you have a drainage expert on with you, Bob?
Sorry, no, our drainage designer isn't on tonight, but that is something that's considered in pond designs for VDOT and other agencies. Resiliency and the future conditions are certainly something that's accounted for in drainage design more and more these days.
Thanks, Bob. Rosemary asks, wants to state that Long Branch is a small stream unless and until we have the moderate to large rain events, which are coming more frequently. I hope stormwater management encompasses future potential rainfall totals and is not based on few decades. Thank you. And we're going to go ahead and take our last question. It's a verbal question, and then we'll wrap it up for tonight. It's a verbal question from Alexander Medvedev. Alexander, we're going to unmute you now, and you will need to unmute yourself to ask your question.
Hello, can you hear me?
Yes, we can. Thank you.
Wonderful. Thank you very much for hosting this event. I really appreciate that as a Springfield president. Today was a very significant day to understand that is, passing by the transportation system and then the ever reliable infrastructure is really a huge question. Listening to every comment and consideration that I've went through, just quietly listened to it because it was really, really interesting to see the opinions, which is all matters, but I want to address that first. I wanted to ask is how much effort and time has been put into this project at this stage, because that would be something else that I would basically tell the value of this project and at the same time give the time for how much assessment how much time and assessments have been addressed to this project. I understand this is a no small effort, and a lot of feathers will be ruffled by some of the propositions. And as I've heard multiple times, this is a subject to change to some of them to make an adjustment and fit the project better for the future needs. I just want to make sure that this project is not hastily developed and implemented, as there are being numerous missteps with the VDOT, and a project that has been lately on the news, including some of the lines with the Metro that has been with a very negative publicity, and that is kind of something else that I track. I have more than 25 years of very enthusiastic exploration of the public transportation systems that I have completed across the world, and I will try to yield my time as fast as I could, because I've been writing and traveling around the globe, including Moscow in Russia, Chicago in the United States, public transportation in Seattle or Portland, Oregon, which gives me a little bit of a leeway and understanding how the project should be developed and what should be put to consideration and how much time should be addressed to that. A lot of the systems really and details stems from amount of time, surveying, and kind of not just the mental effort, but the real understanding of the ground and the facilities that you were dealing with to address the particular needs and issues. So this project has been on my radar for quite some time, and I'm really interested into how much time it is already been dedicated to this project and what future considerations are really something that is a concern of the consultants and the designers of this project. I yield my time.
Thank you for your question. I can give you some history of the evolution of this project, and perhaps Tom can supplement it. But VDOT, I believe this project was being studied by the county and the other affected community, WMATA as well. And there were several options of connections that were considered for this connection between Loisdale and Frontier Drive, where it exists at the moment, where it ends at the moment. if you just show the overall slide of the project, Bob. And when VDOT was given this project, I think it was in 2015, we were requested by the county to manage the design of the selected option that had been studied prior to us. And what you see now in terms of the alignment is the development of that preferred option that was studied prior to us managing this project. When VDOT got it, we immediately did the groundwork of picking up the topographic survey, all the utilities that existed in this location. As the design progressed, we coordinated with the affected property owners. As you know, there's significant federal buildings here, the GSA building, which is the last large warehouse building that you see on this slide. They're a significant stakeholder. I believe there was talk at one point where the FBI was going to relocate to this facility when we began this project, and then that idea was shelved. As you can see, there is that white building, which is a U-shaped building that is also a federal occupant of that building. And then adjacent to that is the Nova campus. We've been coordinating with all these property owners throughout the process of the design. We've been coordinating with the owners of all the other properties adjacent to this corridor. And the major stakeholder in this project is WMATA, and they can also testify to our coordination efforts because we have significant work going on in and around the Franconia Metro station there. So all this coordination has been going on since 2015, and where are we now? 2022, and we are in. We have a very solid foundation about the direction this project is going, and with the feedback that we get from the public at this point, we can continue to take those concerns into consideration as we go into the final design stage.
Thank you, Zamir, and the rest of our panelists. We're going to go ahead and conclude the question and answer and comment portion of our location and design public hearing. So if you have future questions, we encourage you to submit them through one of the options discussed earlier in the presentation. All questions and comments have been recorded. I will now turn it back over to Andy.
All right, well, thank you, Carol. And with that, we're going to go ahead and close out our public hearing this evening. So on behalf of VDOT and Metro, as well as Fairfax County, we want to sincerely thank you for your participation and feedback tonight. And we look forward to continuing to work with the community to move this project forward through development and ultimately to construction. So with that, thank you and good night.